The one thing that we could say about African peoples is that we left evidence of ourselves all over this planet. And that's the problem with European scientists. The deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets.
You won't find a monument anywhere prior to 1500 that isn't Africoid in some way, shape, or form.
People think Africa and Asia and Guatemala, Southern America, these places were all jungle. Jungle came after the invasions of European colonialism. Then the jungles came in because nobody was manning the land anymore.
I'm an African American. Africa's my race, America's my geopolitical place. I'm not surrendering that to anybody.
The monument that we know is Stonehenge. A European writer by the name of Gerald Massey said in one of his books that Stonehenge was built by an African man named Mauryan.
The letter J, let me say this again. The letter J was not invented until the 1600s. So the reality is, Jesus is not the name of that person.
Studies have consistently shown now for decades that people of color are no more likely to use or sell illegal drugs than whites.
You're destined to be a planned minority. You know what a minority means? That means a loser. It means you're a loser.
Black folk don't have a problem. White folk got a problem. Black folk problem is that white folk got a problem. The real problem we have is white supremacy.
The 13th Amendment reads, slavery is abolished except when you are found guilty of a crime and go to jail. So prison is the slave plantation. And look at all the things that are denied you in jail is the same thing that were denied Africans on the plantation. Slavery still is very much alive.
Today, there are more African American adults under correctional control in prisoner jail on probation or parole than were enslaved in 1850, a decade before the Civil War began. Crime and crime rates did not drive mass incarceration to begin with. Incarceration rates have fluctuated over the years, gone up, gone down. Today, are actually at historical lows, but incarceration rates, especially black incarceration rates, have consistently soared regardless of whether crime is going up or going down in any given community or the nation as a whole. War on drugs, which has been a major engine of mass incarceration, has targeted poor communities of color, especially black and brown men, even though studies have consistently shown now for decades that people of color are no more likely to use or sell illegal drugs than white.
Before 1964, the prison rate in America, the majority of people in prison were white people, were white guys. But the thing is, there was no need to have a strong police presence in the black community because black people were already controlled by the basic laws of the land. Black people were already controlled by Jim Crow laws, signs saying black people drink from this water fountain, black people couldn't live in this neighborhood. So black people were just controlled, period, at that time. Now, after the Civil Rights Bill passed in 1964, this is when the police presence became very strong in the black community, because the average citizen couldn't control black people like they could before then. So they came up with another strategy and had law enforcement do it. So around 1964-65, black communities were flooded with law enforcement. And this is why the Black Panthers was started, because of the police brutality that had started in the black community.
Prisoners themselves represent a small percentage of the population under correctional control. Like today, there's about 7.6 million people under correctional control, but only about 1.3 million are in prison of that. The rest are on probation, parole, in jail, overwhelmingly for, you know, minor nonviolent offenses and drug offenses. The problem is that even if you don't get prison time, even if you're lucky enough to get just felony probation, you're saddled for the rest of your life with a felony record. And so the question isn't, in my view, just who's in prison. The question is, who is branded a criminal or felon and must live with that label for the rest of their lives.
The people said, well, if we don't need black labor anymore, what do we do with it? Well, we have to set up a system in the commercial system, or at least incorporate black people into the commercial system so that they make us money without having to do the labor of picking cotton or picking sugar cane or whatever. We're already past that. So how do we make a more sophisticated plantation where we can keep slaves? Well, let's criminalize pretty much every damn thing that we do. There are over 1 million laws on the books now. Who needs 1 million laws? Unless you want to control people's behavior.
The police presence has always been in the black community because we are prisoners of war. That's number one. The original police were created to catch slaves. They were slave catchers. There was no need to police a white society. There was no need for that in early America. There was no need for that. Police even became wild when police were always about guarding property. That's what the police are about, guarding property. That's it. Their job gets stretched out to a moral responsibility and public safety and that kind of thing later on in their development. But the original concept of a police officer is to make sure your property stays with you. They are hired by the rich, first of all, to protect the rich's property.